Welcome to the AIPMM webinar series. Today's feature is Product Management Leadership. The AIPMM is on the web at www.aipmm.com. It is the Association of International Product Marketing and Management. It was founded in 1998, and it is the largest product management professional group, providing professional development, career advancement, certification, network opportunities, training, resources, and credentials, including the Certified Product Manager, the Certified Product Marketing Manager, the Agile Certified Product Manager, and the Certified Innovation Leader. This is Cindy F. Solomon, your moderator for today. Delighted to be with you. I'm the founder of the Global Product Management Talk and the Startup Product Summit. You can listen on Mondays to the weekly broadcasts with professional experts. Our speaker today, Brian Lawley, has been on. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/PRODMGMTTALK. And I'm delighted to introduce Brian Lawley, who is the CEO and the founder of the 280 Group. And if you are tweeting today, please follow at AIPMM and use the pound PRODMGMT, which is the standard hashtag for product management related info and tweets. So please stay on until the end to win, where there will be 7 giveaways of excellent 280 Group books and resources. And please leave your chat window open, where I will be sending you messages and amplifying the information. To interact, to ask questions, and to make comments, please use your questions box to post questions, and from the questions box, we will do the drawing for who will win the resources from the 280 Group at the end of the session following the Q&A. And feel free to ask questions during the course of the presentation, which Brian will be very happy to answer. So, Brian, take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us. We have a very large crowd today. I figured this would probably be a pretty popular topic. It's, in my opinion, one of the most important aspects of product management is being a great leader. And it's not something that has been focused on extensively in the past. So I'm going to try to share my insights about leadership today and give you some ideas about what great product management leaders have done to be good at it in my career. A little bit of housekeeping first. Cindy mentioned, please do submit your questions. We'll do the questions at the end. There are downloads available for a number of things. You can get the entire slide deck at tinyurl.com/pmleadership. You can also get a copy at no cost of my book, Optimal Product Process, at tinyurl.com/free OPP book. And then something we'll be talking about later in the presentation is a document I wrote called the Product Management Manifesto. And you can download that at tinyurl.com/pmmanifesto. As Cindy mentioned, at the end, we'll be giving away a copy of the Product Management Lifecycle Toolkit. And this is a complete collection of templates covering the entire product lifecycle, including business cases, market requirements, product description, product launch, end of life, and everything else you need to manage a product. And then we'll be giving away 1 electronic copy of each of our books from the 280 Group Press series. As I mentioned, you can download the free Optimal Product Process book, and it covers our 7-phase product lifecycle and also materials for the Certified Product Manager exam through AIPMM. One last thing before we get started, we do have an immense number of resources available at 280group.com under the tab Resource Central. We have all kinds of information, free information about the profession of product management, surveys, archived webinars, free templates. So please take advantage of this and share it with your fellow product managers. This is our agenda today. I'm going to very quickly give you a little bit about my background in the 280 group to give you some context. Then we'll talk about the importance of product management as a profession and how it's evolved over the years. Then we'll do a definition of leadership, and we'll talk about different styles of leadership. And as we go through the styles, I want you to think about where you fit in, where you historically, what type of leader and what style have you used. And also think about in the different roles you've been in, what other style might you have used to be more effective with that particular team or in that particular situation. Then I'm going to talk about specific challenges in terms of leadership as a product manager and provide some solutions in terms of the next steps to become a great leader in the product management profession. And then we'll follow it up, as I mentioned, with questions and the giveaway. So before we get started, I'd like people to give us an idea of who you think are great leaders. Just very quickly, type in the name of someone who you think is a great leader, and Cindy will read a couple of them off, and we'll sort of comment on why we might think they were great.
Okay.
Are we getting any response?
Oh,
Cindy?
we're getting a lot. Okay, so
Probably flooded.
all right, so Trish says Jack Welch. Ian says Steve Jobs. Paul says Gandhi, and so doesn't Garava. Laura says Ronald Reagan. Matt says FDR. Curtis says Tony Dungy. Okay.
Never heard of Tony.
Yeah, so they're coming in a linear fashion, so I can't tell you how many are saying Steve Jobs, but definitely Charlie and David and
probably quite a few.
Quite a few.
I would say he's probably in the top 5 if you asked people in the world who a great leader is.
Yeah, Vera agrees also with Steve Jobs. Okay, so Tony Dungy is a football player. A previous NFL football coach. Thanks, Mark. Okay.
So what would be interesting is keep these leaders in mind, and as we go through the styles of leadership, let's see if, as a group, we can define which type of leader that person might have been and why it might be effective in their particular environment.
Yeah, so I can tell you that the answers have come from politics, presidents, political leaders. Jeff Bezos got a lot of votes. Larry Bird. So they've come from technology and also from athletics. I know Larry Bird is a basketball player.
Sure. Well, let me go through the 280 Group background very quickly. For those of you who don't know us, we've been around for 15 years, and we help companies with product management and product marketing. And our mission in life is to help companies and also individuals deliver products that delight their customers and really help to significantly increase their profits. And we have a very wide range of services, from product management assessments to training to consulting to templates, almost anything you could possibly need to make your job as a product management professional far more effective. We're called the 280 Group because we're located in Silicon Valley, very near the very famous Highway 280, where lots of the world's most innovative companies have been born and where many of the venture capitalists who have funded them either live or work. As I mentioned, we've been in business for 15 years. We work with companies of all sizes, from literally 2 guys in a garage with a great idea all the way up to Adobe, Intel, Cisco, HP, and Symantec. And our products and services, as I mentioned, are very wide. We can do product management assessments where we come in and give you a full report about how product management is working in your company with very specific recommendations about how to take it to the next level. We do training and certification, both public courses and private on-site courses. We provide interim product managers and also do consulting projects. And we have an entire set of toolkits and a product called the Product Management Office, which include templates, and training for all aspects of product management, from how to create great product roadmaps to how to launch a particular product to how to do competitive analysis. And then we also do individual workshops, coaching, and mentoring. So that's a little bit about the 280 group. I want to talk about the product management profession real quickly. As I've been in product management for about 25 years, and the trend that I have seen, particularly in the last 5 years, is that companies are realizing just how critical great product management is in terms of their success. After they build products that customers don't want, or they build products that fail, and 70% of products that are taken to market actually fail, many times they realize that the missing link is good product management. And the profession is really coming into its own. So when I started, there were no books, there were no training courses or certifications, there were no webinars and blogs. Of course, there wasn't even the internet back then. But now there are all kinds of resources. There are books, there are training courses, there's a webinar like this, and the profession really is becoming solidified. And just about 2 months ago, CBS News did a survey in corporate America, and they found that product management is now ranked the number 4 most important job in corporations. The only 3 that are above that are the CEO, the general manager, and executive management. So I think that's a huge stake in the ground in terms of the importance of product management, number 1, and number 2, the reason why you want to be in product management as a great career move. We also found a survey, Money Magazine last year ranked product management in the top 50 jobs. So it really is kind of coming into its own.
Excuse me, Brian. So
yes.
Yushan says that Career Bliss rates product manager as number 5 on happiest jobs in America. Do you have a comment on that? Yes.
I have not heard that statistic. The comment I'll make is product management, if you're in a good company that recognizes it, can be a very happy and rewarding job. And if you're in a company that doesn't recognize it, can be or if you're working with a team that's very difficult, can be a very challenging job. But that's interesting. I'll have to go back and look that up. As most of you probably know, the reason why product management is so important is it really is the central point of communication for everything related to the product. It's the place where the vision and the strategy get driven. It's the place where someone's thinking about the whole product experience. And without product management, all of these different groups can make choices about the product that are optimal for them, but from the customer point of view, may not be optimal. For instance, support might put in place a policy that really doesn't match the competitive nature or the competitor's support, or doesn't match what customers really need or what they're willing to pay for. It makes sense from support's point of view, perhaps from an expense point of view. So the product manager has to be the point in the middle who is responsible for the whole product, who creates the roadmap and tells everyone what the requirements are. And they also have to lead all of those groups. And that's really what this presentation is about. Because as a product manager, none of these groups, it's very rare that any one of these groups will formally report into you. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to lead them. You have to create a vision about the product, and then you have to influence them to take the product in all the different aspects towards that vision. So now I start off just with a couple of definitions of leadership. But before we do that, maybe we can ask the audience if we could have a couple of, if you could type in a quick definition. What is a leader? What is leadership? You should have the Jeopardy music playing while we're waiting for responses.
We didn't have that keyed up.
We'll do that on the next one. Any responses, Cindy?
Okay, wow. They're scrolling in quickly. So let me see if I can. All right. Someone who has followers. A person who affects change. A quote-unquote servant leader. It is a fellowship that defines the leadership. A leader instills a vision and influence. Let's see. A leader is one who can create more leaders. Forecasting a vision, unabashed driving toward a goal gives a recognition to the team. I think leadership is having all the data and taking action on it. The person who provides direction and reinforces it, someone who challenges everyone, recognizes the value in other people, helps coworkers exceed their abilities and expectations.
Wow. Lots of good answers. I especially like the one about someone who creates leaders. And the great thing about doing these webinars is we always have a really smart audience, and I always learn something really interesting. So let me show you a couple of the definitions I found. One is, this is from an integrative theory of leadership, the book, a process of social influence in which one person can enlist the aid and support of others in the accomplishment of a common task. And notice they say, in this case, they say enlist. It's not about ordering the aid and support, although that is one form of leadership style, and we'll go through that when we get to the leadership style section. The next one I particularly like, probably just because I'm such a big fan of Peter Drucker, but management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. And oftentimes, in order to be a great leader, you have to do things that are going to be unpopular. Many times in corporate America, if you want to be a true leader, you have to do the right thing for the company rather than the right thing for you at that particular moment. And the people who do that, all of the people around them recognize that they're actually taking a leadership position, but it's certainly not easy. And then last, very simple one, a person who guides or directs a group. So I'm going to cover a couple of different styles of leaderships and a couple of frameworks. This is the first one, the managerial or leadership grid. And I think this is particularly important because I've seen many people who are managers who thought they were leaders do a very horrible job by not applying the right particular technique given the people that they have. And in terms of being a leader, obviously x-axis is concern for results and y-axis is concern for people. Now, if I were to put someone like Steve Jobs on here, he is definitely a 9 in terms of concern for results. And many people, if you have worked for him or heard the stories, he's definitely authoritarian in some ways. However, when he challenged people and when he pushed them and said, this is not good enough, there was a sincere concern for the person themselves. So I would put him at maybe a 9 for concern for results, and perhaps a 6 or 7 in terms of concern for people. So he was, in my opinion, he was very much of a team leader. Now, I've personally had managers who had lots of concern for their people. They were, very, very good at developing the people's careers and very good at meeting the people's needs and goals. Yet they weren't that concerned with results. And in some cases, they might have been working on a product line that wasn't as critical for the company, or they may have been nearing retirement and they just wanted to relax. But those are what I would call the country club people. They're very strong on people skills, but they're very weak on task-oriented skills. Now, we probably all have seen the opposite, which is the authoritarian, where the person is very concerned about results, very good on tasks, very good at driving, getting things done, but has little or no concern for the people that they're leading. I haven't personally worked at Oracle, but I've heard stories about Larry Ellison and being very much this way. In some cases, I've heard that he'll take 2 teams and have them both work on the same product. And simply whoever wins, they'll ship that product and that team gets to stay. It's a very authoritarian approach. Now, in many cases, leadership is going to be contextual, and you really have to think about who you're working with. For instance, if you have very, very task-driven, very motivated, very self-motivated employees, you can take a little more of a country club approach because they're going to pick up the slack. And likewise, if you have employees that are not that motivated or employees that need a lot of guidance, and that you're having a hard time really getting them to do what you want, or team members, you may have to take more of an authoritarian approach in order to get the results. Now, a second way of looking at this came from a 1939 study where there are three different types: authoritarian, participative, and delegated. Now, the authoritarian, I like to use, I personally don't know if this is Vladimir Putin's style, but given the image that he portrays in the press and some of the things that he's done, I have to speculate that he's probably an authoritarian, and in which case, when he says something, you do it, period. Authoritarians may have very clear expectations. They will make decisions with little or no input, oftentimes because they are either, number one, the expert, or number two, they have absolute power. The authoritarian style, the decisions tend to be less creative because you don't get the creativity and the good ideas from other people who can be very intelligent, very knowledgeable. But it's an optimal style when you have little time, and number one, and number two, when the leader is much, much more knowledgeable. And there are classic stories about Steve Jobs being very authoritarian. There are people actually who work for me on my team who had gone in and the first thing Steve Jobs did when he went back to Apple was he decided he was going to clean up the entire product line. So every single product manager had to go in and justify their product line's existence. And one of the divisions was the imaging division with printers, which was $1 billion business. And Steve was very authoritarian about it. They came in and gave their presentation, had a very good case for why they should stay in the printer business. But Steve was very knowledgeable. He knew what the vision was, and within less than an hour, he shut down the entire thing. The other person who I think is very well known as being authoritarian is Steve Ballmer at Microsoft. I remember I have many friends who work there, and the basic thing is when Steve tells you to do something, you do it, period. He actually is famous for having thrown a chair at someone in his office. I don't know if that's a folk legend story or not, but he certainly has an authoritarian style. Now, the second is participative, and this is generally the most effective. This is the style that if I have a team that I work with that are all good players, they all can get the vision and they all want to succeed, this is the style that I'll use. It can be very effective. What you do is you offer guidance to the group. You put some ideas out about how, here is where we're going. You're very solid about what the vision is, but then you get the group to participate. You get lots of input, but you have to make sure that it's not perceived as being a democracy, because products that are created by democracy end up being mediocre. A product by committee tends to be really, really bad. We use the analogy of a houseboat. It's not a very good house, and it's not a very good boat. It's probably designed by a committee. But you will get a lot more creativity if you take this approach, number one. And number two, you'll have a lot more buy-in. Because even if people ultimately disagree with your final decision, they at least feel heard, and they understand some of the reasoning why you made the decision. You won't get everyone to buy in all the time, but certainly if you take this approach, it's much, much more effective. A great example of where to apply this in product management is when you're writing a market requirements document and you're working with the team to figure out what the feature set should be. I've seen product managers actually show up with a completed market requirements document and product requirements, product description, present it to their engineering teams without having talked to them at all during the process. And the result was the engineers don't feel like they've had any input. And one of the problems with that is engineers are really great. They're creative. They'll come up with great solutions and great things that you'll never think about. So participative is a great approach if you have a good team that you can work with. You show them your ideas along the way. You get their input. So when you show up with that market requirements document, it's not a big surprise. Everyone knows what the vision is. We know where we're going. You might still have arguments about a couple of features being in or out, but you have a lot more buy-in. And the same thing with your salespeople. Make them a part of the process. Get their input. Explain your reasoning. Explain all of the prioritization techniques that you're using. If you don't have good prioritization techniques, look at our feature prioritization toolkit. It teaches you, there's a workbook and you can put your features in it, and there's 5 or 6 different ways to logically map out how you want to prioritize things. And then the third is delegative. And this is really where you provide little or no guidance. The group members themselves make the decisions. It's good where the group members are highly qualified. It can also be good if you have a strong group member who is willing to sort of take the reins. The big challenge with doing this is oftentimes it'll be undefined who really owns what and what should happen. And there's a technique we teach our clients called DAISY that shows who it's decision makers, approvers, contributors, and informed, where it clarifies what the roles are of everyone. So that's a way to deal with this. But the other challenge is when you delegate things, the team may not have the motivation that you have to solve the problem or to solve it in a compelling way. As I mentioned, leadership styles are really contextual. It depends on what kind of team. You might have an engineering team that is absolutely opposed to having any involvement with product management. And if you try to use an authoritarian approach with that team, you'll fail miserably. You'll just butt heads. There are a couple of other styles here. One is visionary. This is where you really put out a big picture of where the group is going, but not necessarily how to get there. And this is a great approach if you have talented people that you know will buy into the vision and that you know can come up with creative solutions. For individuals, if you're managing product managers, certainly coaching can be a great leadership style, helping people improve on performance and focus on their goals. Affiliative, we just talked about. Democratic. Democratic draws on people's knowledge and skills. It creates a group commitment. The challenge with democratic is, as I mentioned, if there isn't one ultimate person who has the decision authority, you're going to end up with a lot of ongoing battles that continue, issues that continue coming up even though you thought they were resolved, number one. And number two, everybody on the team is going to believe that their vote is equal. Their input is equal. But ultimately, as a leader, you have to have the final say. The next one I like a lot, pace setting. You set very high standards for performance, so you're obsessive about doing things better and faster. This is an ultimate tribute to Steve Jobs. He was obsessive about it. And even when someone came to him with something that was great, he'd say, yes, but this could be 1% better. And then the last is commanding, and this is military-style leadership. Depending on the organization, there are some organizations that are very formal, where the chain of command is very clear, and this particular style will work very, very well. In product management, the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is it's very, very rare that you have those other groups reporting to you or that you have full responsibility for the P&L for your product. So military-style leadership is often, is most of the time, not an option.
Brian, specifically about in product management, there's been a number of questions about how to work cross-functionally as a product manager and employ any of these leadership methods.
Sure. And actually, when I get into the section about how to be a great leader, I'll talk a little bit about that. One of the biggest factors is you have to get very clear on the role of product management, and you have to evangelize that inside of your company. So if you take that circular diagram with all of the other groups, and you go to each group and you have a very strong vision for your product, and you say, here's where the product's going, here's our strategy, here's where the competition's going, here's what the market looks like, and that's another way to really influence people is establish yourself as the market and customer expert. And you go to them and you explain that and you evangelize it. Oftentimes they'll get that that you're sort of the central person, and you can get them to buy into, okay, let we want to work with you and we want to make this product successful. If they choose suboptimal things for the products, you can bring the discussion straight back to that. Well, as the product manager, I can tell you that my product is not going to succeed, or it's not going to succeed nearly as well because of this decision. Here's what I need from you. The other thing you can do is on a personal level, you can use a lot of different leadership and motivation techniques. And you really have to read the person and get a sense of what they're motivated by. Many people are motivated by praise and great results. Let's build an amazing product so that as a product team, we rise up in the company. Or, let's get this done by such and such date, and then we'll have a reward. Other people need negative motivation, and there are many employees who are like this, where you have to get this and this and this done, or you won't get your bonus, or you'll lose your job. And if you try to use positive motivation on a negative motivation person, it'll backfire, and vice versa. And some people need a combination of both. For me, I personally, when people try to use negative motivation on me and say, "Oh, you better do this or this will happen," it just doesn't work. In fact, it backfires. But if you give me positive motivation, you give me some kind of a reward or some vision or picture of what I'm going to get as a result of working hard, it works very, very well. There are also a whole range of other more subtle approaches. Sometimes you have to be a leader without people knowing. So there's a white paper on our website about how to work with difficult engineering teams. It's a free download. I'd encourage you to get it. And there's also a chapter in my book, The Phenomenal Product Manager, about how to work with your sales team, how to work with your engineers. There are lots of subtle techniques you can use. One technique I've seen used many, many times is the idea of sort of talking about the problem and then with your engineers, particularly if you have really good engineers who are kind of divas. They are amazing coders. They're amazingly creative people, but it's very hard for them to embrace someone else's idea. If you talk about it and you play to their egos, many times you can have them come up with a solution where it appears that they invented the idea and they go off and implement it. And as a product manager, it doesn't matter who gets the credit for inventing the idea. What you need to be concerned about as a product manager is this product going to be a great product? Are my customers going to be inspired? Are they going to love it? Another technique is to, in terms of subtle approaches, if you don't have leadership authority and you can't seem to gain it, get as much data as you can, particularly when working with engineers, because if you have good data, it speaks for itself, and it's very difficult to argue with decisions that are based on good data. So I want to talk about the leadership challenges in product management now. This is one of my favorite quotes about product management. Product managers tend to have all the responsibility and at the same time no formal authority. And if you haven't read my product management manifesto, I highly encourage you to download it. It's a one-page description of what the 280 group believes product management is all about, and what a great product manager should be like, and what they should care about. And one of the things it says is, I realize I have no formal authority, but I'm going to do everything possible that I can to bring the best possible product to market and make sure the marketing and everything else is as successful as possible. The lack of product management role understanding throughout the company is a huge challenge. And a big part of what we do with our clients is we go in and educate the other groups. Here's what great product management is. Here are companies that use great product management. And here's how it's going to help you in terms of your role, number one, and number two, in terms of helping your company deliver better products. One of the early questions or comments was about the survey that said product management is one of the 5 happiest jobs. And I mentioned that if your company gets it, it absolutely can be. In many companies, particularly if they're driven by people who've been in one particular discipline, for instance, somebody who's been in sales or somebody who's been in engineering, and they've sort of grown up that way, many times you won't have the management support for the concept of product management. And many times the management won't really have any idea what product management is doing, number one, and number two, what they should be doing in terms of driving strategy for the products and making sure that things are as successful as possible. Another big challenge in product management is when the product manager isn't established as the market and customer authority, because you have to take very specific steps to ensure that you know more about the customer, the market, the competition, the vision of the product, where the product's going. You know more than anyone else in the company, number one, and number two, then you have to constantly show your team and remind your team that you indeed do own that position. Another big challenge is when you have someone who's in a product management position where they don't have enough technical capabilities. And if you're working with a technical engineering team, you have to have enough technical credibility so that they'll respect you. You don't have to understand architectures, underlying architectures and code. You don't have to be able to code yourself, but you do have to be able to talk about things like upcoming technologies, industry standards, and you have to understand the implications of some of the engineering decisions they're making. The next one, I think, is actually one of the rules and 42 rules of product management, and that is that the most important word a product manager can use is the word no. And this is where you really find out if you are using a leadership style and are viewed as a leader. So when you're able to say no very firmly to requests, or say no, not at this time, or no, we'll put that on the roadmap, but we're not changing our schedule or our plans accordingly. Two other things. One is not being bold enough, and I think being bold and having the courage to make tough decisions and also to confront difficult situations is like a muscle. Some product managers come in and they're very strong right off the gate. Some are very strong, and as a result, they accidentally come across as authoritarian, and that gives them big problems. But you have to be assertive, not necessarily aggressive, but assertive, so that you're able to confront the issues and have enough guts to tell the emperor he has no clothes if he really has no clothes. And then the last one is lack of training. Across all different companies, product management the function is slightly different. Many companies don't have formal product management training programs, and so a lot of product management is learning on the job. So if you don't have the fundamental skills of product management, if you can't write and prioritize good requirements, if you can't do business cases, if you can't launch a product, if you can't end of life a product, it's very difficult to be a leader and learn those skills at the same time. So one thing that can really help you in terms of leadership is getting some good training, getting a certification, and so that you understand the entire product life cycle and you can teach your team about it. But probably the biggest leadership challenge that we see is what we call the product janitor challenge. And this is a term the 280 group made up after training literally tens of thousands of product managers and talking about the challenges. One of the biggest rat holes or potholes that product managers fall into is that because they feel the responsibility for the full product, oftentimes they become sort of a catch-all for everything that needs to get done. And so they'll end up with a massive to-do list of tactical items, many of which should be being done by other departments or should be outsourced. And as a result, instead of being a strategic thinker, instead of doing the high-level things that need to be done, in addition to a good portion of tactical, they end up cleaning up the entire mess, and that's what we mean by the product janitor. So we always say, be a product manager, don't be a product janitor. Now, if you're leading product management teams, one of the biggest challenges and one of the first things you need to do is figure out where your organization is in terms of process and in terms of how mature you are. Because depending on that, your approach and what your activities are going to be very different. Now, this is the Carnegie Mellon CMMI scale. And the idea behind it is that as companies become more mature, they move up and to the right. They become more efficient and they can repeat things much more effectively. So if you're leading a product management team at a startup where things are ad hoc, where it's unpredictable, where the founder is going to walk in twice a day with new product feature ideas based on the last customer they talked to, where you don't have any formal process, you don't deliver requirements, etc. That's going to be a very different challenge leading your product managers than if you're, say, at a company that's well established and maybe they're at the measured point where they have a very clear process. In fact, they might have far too much process. It might take, we've seen companies where it takes a year and a half just to get a concept through all of the gates to approve development. So when you're managing your teams, it's going to be a very different approach. In ad hoc, you're going to have to be much more flexible. You're probably going to want to take less of an authoritarian approach if you think back to all of those different models. If you're in measured, you may want to take much more of an authoritarian, and you may want to take that same approach, have your product managers take that same approach with the groups. If there's a formal process and there's anything blocking it, then you approach it with an authoritarian leadership style that says, I have something I need to get done here. You're blocking me. I need your involvement immediately so that we can get past this. So I encourage product management leaders, whether they're product line managers, directors, vice presidents, to figure out where you are in this scale and use that to apply. The other challenge of leading product management teams are you have even more responsibility than your product managers, and you rarely have little more authority. You can still go and influence people, but there are some organizations where up at the VP or senior VP level of product management, they have a tremendous amount of formal authority, but that's probably the exception rather than the rule. The other challenges are if you have good product managers, they're going to have strong personalities. Their product managers are a challenge to manage because they have strong personalities, they're bold, they have strong opinions. That's a good thing, but it's also a challenge. The role confusion that I mentioned earlier is the same. As a leader of a product management group, part of your charter should be to be out evangelizing the other groups about what your group does and how they're going to benefit the other groups and how the other groups can work very effectively with you. As I mentioned, there can be broken processes. There can be inherited teams. You may have inherited a team where you've got one great product manager and 3 people that are C players, and you have to clean house. The other challenges are, in many companies, there aren't any standardized tools. So if you don't have something like the Product Management Lifecycle Toolkit, then your team is constantly reinventing the wheel, creating templates, having to go find old versions of documents, etc. And then lastly, management support. And this is something we help clients with. We come in and do a presentation on the value of product management, and we do it to senior executives to really get them on board about here's why, if you don't have great product management now, why you need to, because all it takes is a few engineers working on something that customers really don't want, and you've just wasted a whole bunch of money. And the last couple of slides, I'm going to talk about how to become a great leader. I think one of the fundamental things that you have to do in order to go from being a weak leader to a strong leader is develop that perception in your own mind. If you don't believe that you can lead the team and that you have the capabilities, then the team's not going to believe you. And one of the ways to reinforce that is to, as you speak and as you write and as you act, put authority in your tone. And I've seen this work literally thousands of times. An example would be someone comes to you, your salesperson comes to you and says, I absolutely have to have this feature in the next release. In 2 weeks, I'll close a deal. It's $5 million. So there's a couple ways you could react to that. One would be, and you have to make a spot decision. Am I going to risk slipping the schedule and trying to get this feature in for this salesperson? So one approach for somebody who's not in a leadership frame of mind might be, well, let's see what we can do, or or they just don't want to say no. Another approach is with a very clear tone to say, there's no way we're putting anything else in this particular release. I'll take your requirements down and we'll get it in as soon as possible. And by the way, I want a confidence level. If you believe this is a $5 million deal, what's your confidence level? Are you going to get it? Are you 90% confident you're going to get this? Because we're not going to put resources on it unless you can put your reputation on the line. There's two different ways of reacting there. And when you start to speak with authority and you start to speak as the voice of the customer, people will notice. We've already talked about being bold. You don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to be over the top, but you want to be assertive enough so that people know that you're going to challenge them. We definitely adapt to the appropriate leadership style, download these slides and go back through the leadership styles and think about how you've been leading in different situations and what might be more appropriate. The next one, I think, is if you want to be a great product management leader, it's probably, other than having that image in your mind of you being a great leader, it's probably the second most important, and that is you absolutely have to establish yourself as the expert. So you need to study the competition. You need to know your business inside and out. You need to know your market, the growth rates. You need to know customers. You need to know trends. And you also need to constantly make people aware that you know that. So one thing I did as a product manager was I always had a set of data points, usually between 7 and 10, about what was going on in our market. And I would use those in conversations. So the team's talking about, a good example would be, okay, what browsers do we need to support? And when I was working on a product that relied on a browser, I always had browser market shares. So I was able to say, Internet Explorer 7 and above has 83% of the market. And, in a conversation like that, I might have had a number of people who were very enthusiastic about Firefox, for instance. And they'd say, we don't need to support IE7, we'll just do IE8. But when you have the data and you have good data and you use it, then people start to perceive as every single opinion that you put out and everything that you say usually has a very good backup, and they start to perceive that you've got data and really good solid opinions. Practice saying no. I went to a communication class once, and all we did for the first 15 minutes was practice saying no and practice having no said to us. I would encourage you to sit down with your significant other and have them ask you something like, can I have a back rub? And practice saying no because it's awkward, and it's a skill, and it's like a muscle. And lastly, don't be a product janitor. If you haven't read my book, The Phenomenal Product Manager, there's a productivity section in there that talks about how do you prioritize things so you're working only on the most important things. That's super valuable. And I can't stress this enough. If you take on everything, you'll end up doing low-level things. You won't be perceived as a leader, and you won't be as effective at making your product successful as you could be. In terms of getting great at leading PM teams, definitely choose your style based on context and understand your team's motivations. The positive and negative motivation techniques are very valuable. As a core part of your role, you need to be communicating what product management is doing, what your group is doing to all of the peer groups, to sales, to engineering, to support, and to management. And you need to assume the authority. The other thing that you can do is really, if you want to be perceived as a leader, raise your team up to be perceived as leaders. You get them great training or certifications, give them great tools, buy them books. One company that was a client of ours actually bought a copy of The Phenomenal Product Manager for an entire group, and they read one chapter a week and spent 10 minutes discussing it in their staff meeting. And it worked out great because then they could bounce off ideas. Well, how do you work better with your engineering team? Or I'm having a problem with sales. What do you do over here? But if you make your team experts and you get them to be leaders, and that kind of gets back to that, a leader is someone who creates new leaders. If you do that, then everyone in the company will see that you have a great team, and your leadership quotient will go far, far up. And then lastly, take the company to the next level. If your company is broken, if your process is broken, if you don't have support for PM, it's going to be very difficult for you to be a leader and to lead your product management team because they'll get discouraged. So you need to fix those. If there are inherent challenges in the environment, you need to do what you can to fix them. A couple of suggested resources. We do have an advanced product management leadership course that we'll be coming out with, so email us if you're interested in that. I always recommend Dale Carnegie classes, particularly the leadership ones are excellent. And then there's a couple of books here, How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Action. Start with Why. That is a particularly powerful book. Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun. That's a very well-known book. And then another book that's not that well-known, but that was written by a former CEO that I worked for and who mentored me in my career, is called Unusually Excellent, The 9 Skills Required for the Practice of Great Leadership, and by John Hamm. And John has studied great leaders, particularly in Silicon Valley, and has some really excellent insights. So I encourage you to take a look at all of them. Let's see. So if you need help, just contact us. We can do assessments, training, and all this other stuff. We have a bunch of upcoming courses in San Jose, Austin, New York. You can find those on the website. And I think we're going to do questions, and then we'll do the drawing.
Okay. A lot of great questions, a lot of great fans of this material and of the 280 group. So thanks for joining us. Okay, let's see. So how would you apply this information to an agile environment?
Well, I don't think of an agile environment as all that different. You know, the product manager has the same responsibilities. They're just doing things a little bit differently. One of the key things is, are you the product owner? And if you're in an agile environment and you're not the product owner, you better develop a way to be able to lead the product owner either in subtle or more formal ways. Because otherwise, you know, if the product owner has the final decision on what features go in and how they're implemented, then you as a product manager, your product's going to suffer. So number one, make sure that you end up with the product owner role. And number two, if you can't get the product owner role, establish yourself as the expert and make it clear to the product owner that before they make any decision that has to do with the actual feature set and how it's going to affect customers, they have to come to you and get your very strong input.
Okay. Let's see. So there were some questions that came in earlier. I'm trying to pull them up. Okay, so in referencing back to the slide about all of the organizational interfaces that PM interacts with, this is from Anna. How does leadership play out when it is shared with a program/portfolio engineer who isn't just a scheduler, but is actually writing tech specs and user stories? How can you share leadership? It's a challenge in big corporations when the PM is customer facing and the program manager is more inward facing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of the big challenges we have in the profession. Is almost every company does it differently. You know, some companies have product managers, some companies have product marketers, some companies have program managers, some companies have combinations of all of them. It is possible to share leadership. What you want to do in that case is, imagine both of you inside the circle and sit down with the person and say, okay, which parts do you own? Which parts do I own? And is there who has the final say on each of these parts? And or do we both have to agree? And before any critical decision is made, for instance, what feature goes into the product, well, work with the program manager may own that but the product manager or the product marketing manager, whatever the title, has significant input, and then vice versa. When you're positioning the product, the program manager should have, may have input, but the product manager or product marketing manager actually owns it. So sit down with that person and get clear. It is possible to have two-person leadership. It is more of a challenge, but sometimes the structural reality of a company is just such that you have to deal with it that way.
Exactly. So Scott is a certified PM, and he just signed on with a 100-plus employee company that has never before had a product management team. Technology and sales have always driven the direction. So tactfully, how do you start driving recognition of product management as a leader of the product direction? And how long can it take? Very good questions.
It is, and it's a very common question. 100 people is an interesting size because we have a lot of clients who come to us, and when you get to 70 to 100 people, oftentimes it's been a founder-driven company, and you get to the size where you can no longer do things the way you were doing them before. And so you have to start to establish product management as a function. You have to establish the lightest weight possible process you can. Otherwise, you just can't run an organization that size the way that you used to run a startup. There are a couple of suggestions that I have. One is download the free copy of my Optimal Product Process book and distribute that throughout the company. You're welcome to distribute it. It talks about the 7-phase life cycle, what has to happen in each phase, and also the benefits of implementing a product process. There's also a white paper on our site that is called How to Implement a Lightweight Product Process at Your Company. It explains the benefits to salespeople and the benefits to engineers and the benefits to executives. That's the biggest key is having them understand. If you go to the executives and say, well, with just a little bit of good product management here, we can have better products. We can spend less on features and things customers don't want. We can have a more regular schedule that's more reliable. And we can have employees that are far less stressed out. When you start to convey the benefits to them and it hits home for them, better products, more revenue, more reliable, then they start to become open to listen to it. The other thing I'll offer is I do have a presentation called Why Your Company Needs Great Product Management. I provide that presentation to anyone who wants it for free. Just email me at contact@280group.com. You can use that to pitch internally, but we also do an executive seminar, a short presentation where we come in and talk about product management as a function. And sometimes having external experts come in, where we're able to say, look, we've got tens of thousands of customers, and on a consulting basis, we've been inside of literally hundreds of companies. So we know what works and what doesn't. Sometimes being able to have that expertise will get the executives more on board. And the other big thing is if you can find one executive who will be the executive sponsor or the CEO, that is a huge key, because we go into companies all the time and completely re-engineer them. And if we have the CEO's support or we have a senior VP's support, oftentimes everything else will fall into line. The CEO will simply say, we're going to do things differently. Here's the group that's designed our new process. Here's all the templates. We're going to train you all, and then they're going to help coach you through the first couple of product life cycles. So if you can get an executive sponsor, the other thing I'll say is, as a product manager and a new product manager in a company that doesn't understand product management, you have an amazing opportunity to show that you're a leader, because if you position it as this is the right thing for the company, not just for me as a product manager, and you really help drive the effort, your visibility can really rise, and people will see it as, wow, this person really understands how a great business runs, and they're really adding a lot of value.
Great. So we're coming to the end of the hour, and it is time for the drawing. We have
Great.
7 things to give away, so...
Okay. So the first thing is a copy of the Product Management Lifecycle Toolkit.
And the winner is Scott Meyer.
Congratulations. By the way, for everyone who wins, we're capturing your names and we'll email you afterwards. And now for the electronic copies of the 280 Group Press Series. The first is 42 Rules of Product Marketing.
And the winner is Wayne Petitpaz.
Excellent. And the next is Lean Product Management.
And the winner is Cameron Kittle.
Okay. We need the drum roll. Next is Expert Product Management. That was my first book.
Oh, there it is. Tim O'Rourke. Congratulations.
Okay. And the next is my favorite book and the best-selling book, The Phenomenal Product Manager.
And the winner is Trish Kness.
I love the drum roll. Next is Agile Excellence for Product Managers, which was written by Greg Cohen on our staff and is the basis of our one-day Agile Product Management Excellence course and also the Agile certification.
And the winner is Venkat Kalakad.
Great. And last but not least is 42 Rules of Product Management.
And congratulations to Tom Neary.
Excellent. Well, Cindy, I want to thank AIPMM for sponsoring this webinar, and I want to thank everyone for listening in, for the great participation. I know I learned a couple of pretty interesting things, and I hope this was very valuable to everyone. Please take advantage of all the free resources on the 280 Group site. We do them because we really want to further the product management profession and make them available.
And you can meet Brian in person if you're in Silicon Valley at the upcoming Silicon Valley Product Camp on March 23rd. You can go to prodmanagementtalk.com and look at product events to see a global map of product camps coming up. Do you have another slide?
Thank you for participating.
Okay. There should be another AIPMM thank you slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't have it on this deck. Sorry.
Okay, so this is Cindy F. Solomon. Thank you to the excellent participation. There are a lot of questions that we didn't get to, which I will send to Brian offline. Definitely follow up with Brian at 280 Group. These slides will be posted on the AIPMM site and on the AIPMM SlideShare. And all of this information you can also get at 280 Group. Coming up next week on the AIPMM webinar series, we are talking about disrupting corporate IT and enterprise software. And what it's in applying lean principles to corporate IT and the enterprise. And coming up on Monday on the Global Product Management Talk, we are talking with Alex Cowan, who wrote the book How to Create a Biz Tech Business, a Business in Technology. So join us on the Global Product Management Talk at blogtalkradio.com/PRODMGMT-TALK. The URL for product camps you can also find by going to www.prodmgmttalk.com and look for product events in the menu. Thank you again, Brian. This is Cindy Solomon. If you enjoyed this webinar, please let the AIPMM know. Administration at AIPMM.com. Thank you to BZ Lewis, our engineer at Studio 132. Have a great week.